Yes. Okay. Thank you, Lascam Corla. But I also welcome the introduction of the bill. It's been a while coming, and I wish Deputy Minister Hayes well. I didn't realise, but it's his first bill through the House, so to wish him well with it. And I think it's a very good one for the Minister to start with, because, as it says, the goal is the development of a modern forestry sector which reflects good forestry practices and protects the environment. I think, at long last, we're beginning to concentrate in this country on the things that we do best and can do best and are part of our natural resources, whether it's tourism, and I welcome the fact that the gathering this year has been estimated to bring in an extra 250,000 people. We see yesterday's CSO statistics that shows a significant jump over the last year and 2 years in the number of people in primary production in agriculture, fisheries and forestry. So we are back to basics. We've had 2 budgets now that in the first or second paragraph reference agriculture and the agri sector in the opening speech by the Minister. So forestry, the forestry sector, it is a hugely important part of what we are. As others have said, Coillte alone own 7% of the landmass, probably another 300,000 hectares currently in private ownership and growing every year, thanks to the afforestation programme, which is achieving probably an annual increase of the order of 7,000 to 7,500 hectares. So it is a sector that's growing, and it's only fitting that it would have legislation to reflect the current importance of it to the economy, to the environment and to rural, in particular rural communities. I think a forest has many attributes and many assets for the community. First of all, it provides a raw material for the timber processing sector, and we have seen Coillte and the processors, the private processors, develop an industry that was 80-20 domestic based during the building boom to being, after a couple of trying years, flipping around to being now a 20-80. So 80% of all the processed wood product from our major processing plants is actually exported, and that has taken some doing. It has taken quite a lot of product development, and I think both the Department Forest Service and Coillte have a very important role into the future in playing in the development of new technology, innovation, and working with the private sector in particular. I would have a concern and I welcome the fact, first of all, that the decision to consider the sale of Coillte to privatise Coillte wasn't followed through with, and I do note that there's currently a consideration being given to some form of a proposed merger with Bordemona. I would urge that this is done, this is proceeded with cautiously, that people consider all the implications of a full or partial merger. I mean, and I welcome the Minister, first of all, insofar as that he has issued a statement back a couple of weeks ago saying that he would engage with the stakeholders with regard to the forestry bill. I think it's very important that all the stakeholders are further engaged with regard to any proposal that would come forward. This has to be in the best interest of the land use. Between Coillte and Bordemona, they own over 10%, probably 11 or 12% of the total land in the country. It's publicly owned. It has a vast myriad of different potentials in the area of timber production, biofuel production, recreational use, carbon sinks, and in totality, I think it's very important that all of these are considered and what is the best fit for the two entities. I would have preferred to have seen that develop further at this stage, but I know these things take time, but I think we need clear objectives. And could I just maybe, the Minister would clarify one point, that this bill has implications for all forests, particularly with replanting and felling, that it encompasses both public and privately owned forestry. I think there's some doubt about that. I come from Wicklow, as many will know, and one of the issues, Wicklow in particular has over 20% of the land is covered by forestry. It's the highest, most forested county in the country. The first forestry school was established at the home of Charles Stewart Parnell in 1903, and maintained for many years. And while the forestry education, I have a son doing a degree in forestry, actually is now mainstreamed in the universities, I think there's still a role for forest bases such as Avondale in the training and practical training of undergraduates. The practical experience gained by working with foresters and forestry technicians for young students who we hope and we need to actually develop this industry into the future is invaluable. And I've seen that work firsthand, as I say. A couple of things that I think do need to be looked at that maybe this bill could consider, and I know that the committee stage is still to come, and I would hope that we get a chance at committee stage for the Minister to come in and go through amendments and discussions on it. And one has been mentioned about fires and upland vegetation, in particular in Wicklow, where we have quite a restrictive burning control matter regulations in place, different to the north of Ireland and Scotland. And I think what it is leading to is a high risk of outbreaks of sporadic forest spreading, because the topography of the land and the nature of the land in Wicklow is that Quilcha and private forestries often touch on national park, where these restrictive burning practices are currently in place. It's doing nothing for the vegetation other than allow it to get to too strong of a stage where it's neither suitable for grazing, for hill walking, or for proper fire containment. That's one. Another one is the definition of unenclosed land for the purposes of grant aid. It has, I honestly, I'm not sure whether the department have looked at this, the forest division in the department, but the definition of unenclosed land has proved quite restrictive to land that is, the grants are not as good, and I think that land that is eminently suitable for plantation is being ruled out because it's too expensive to plant, to establish the plantation, because unenclosed land has a lower grant aid rate. I agree with what Deputy Naughton said about the biodiversity and the value of forests and that, and I think we don't always calculate how important, from a biodiversity point of view, the trees and woodland are. They're also a carbon sink. In the last Dáil, I was rapporteur for both the Climate Change and Energy Security Committee and, secondly, the Agriculture Committee, on a piece of research on the use of forestry as a carbon sink in meeting our climate change targets. And I think there's no doubt that, of the order of 80% of all the carbon sequestered over the lifetime of a forest plantation could be used as a saving. The other 20% was used up in the establishment and harvesting. So I think it's an important one. And I think it's one that we should look at when we're trying to establish our credentials with regard to meeting our obligations. We have an irreconcilable position where we are driving on Food Harvest 2020 output targets and climate change obligations, that unless we do something to make our case that we are actually able to meet those targets by counting everything that's used on land, we face a fine from Europe. I'm not quite sure what the consequences of it are, but it's not going to be simple unless we start to make that case, and I think it's something that should be done. Finally, and I don't think the Minister would expect me to finish without mentioning deer. Two things with regard to deer, and I referenced a story that was in the media yesterday in a minute. Most plantations, and I hope to plant some more land myself, I've been told it'll have to be fenced for deer. It's taken as read. Native woodland species plantations have had a difficulty getting approval in Wicklow because of the level of deer. Most private forestries and Quilcha will tell you that and I speak about the non-native invasive species, in particular Sitka deer, have become a scourge. Part of the reason is the upland vegetation, as I said, is not of a nature that's conducive to grazing, but also hybrid vigour has increased the population significantly, and And what we need is a management plan that will actually deal with them and bring them to sustainable levels. There are other issues around it that the Minister is well aware of, and we hope to progress that. But I do think it's important that in the overall discussion on this, that we have measured debate. So again, I look forward to the Minister bringing the bill to the committee, where we get the chance to trash through some of the probably finer tuning that we need, and I commend them for actually opening it up to further consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Deputy Tony McLaughlin, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed. As a deputy in this House representing Sligo North Leitrim, I am well aware of the importance of this industry in Ireland, the vital natural resource that it is, and indeed the challenges that this natural resource presents within communities. 11% of Ireland's land use is forestry, which compares unfavourably to the fact that 30% of the world is covered by forest, and up to 40% in Europe. In Leitrim, 16%, and in Sligo, 12% of land, I understand, is under afforestation, which is above the national average and very much part of the rural community in both counties. The introduction of this bill is timely, and there are a number of proposals contained within the bill that I feel address the current inadequacies that I feel need to be implemented. I am aware in recent years of the many issues around the felling of mature forests, which have implications under many headings.